Standard for examination of documents is very important for the practitioners of documentary credits. This article details how the banks should examine the documents according to the terms and conditions of the Letter of Credit, UCP guidelines, and the International Standard Banking Practice. Welcome back. Today, we are diving deep into a topic that is absolutely crucial for anyone involved in international trade and letters of credit, UCP 600 Article 14. This article, Standard for Examination of Documents, is the backbone of how banks check documents under an LC. Get this wrong, and you could face costly delays or even non-payment. So take a notebook and let's break it down, sub-article by sub-article, with practical examples. First up, Article 14. This is the foundation. It states that the nominated bank, confirming bank, and issuing bank must examine a presentation to determine, on the basis of the documents alone, whether or not they appear on their face to constitute a complying presentation. The on the basis of the documents alone part is key. Banks aren't detectives. They don't investigate the actual goods or the shipment status. They only care about what the presented documents say and if they match the LC terms and UCP 600 rules. Following this, Article 14b gives banks a timeline. It allows a maximum of 5 banking days following the day of presentation to determine if a presentation is compliant. This clock starts the day after the documents are received. So, if documents arrive on a Monday, Tuesday is day 1. This 5-day rule is a maximum, not a target. Banks often act much faster, but this provides a clear, internationally accepted time frame for everyone involved. It prevents documents from sitting on a desk indefinitely. Consider, 5 banking day may be continuous or may be interrupting in the middle. Suppose a set of documents is received on Sunday, a banking day beginning the weekdays, and there is no holiday in the middle. How should we count 5 banking days? Yes, then 5 weekdays will be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. There is no holiday within. Since the set of documents is received on Sunday, the 5 banking days should be counted from Monday, the day after its receipt according to this article. Then Monday to Thursday will be counted as for banking days since there is no holiday in the middle. Suppose Friday and Saturday are holidays, so the following Sunday will cover 5th banking day, and the bank on the decision of the documents must complete their task of examination of documents within following Sunday. There is no option to go beyond Sunday according to this sub-article. This 5 banking days rule applied to all banks who are under the cycle to play their roles according to letter of credit. Now let's talk about Article 14c. This sub-article requires that a presentation including one or more original transport documents, like a bill of lading, must be made by or on behalf of the beneficiary no later than 21 calendar days after the date of shipment. Suppose shipped on board on February 15, 2026, so documents must be submitted within 21 calendar days from the date of shipment. So, excluding the shipped on board date, the latest date for presentation will be March 8, 2026 if the month of February is not a leap year. According to Article 3, when used to determine a period of shipment, the words before and after exclude the date mentioned. However, it also clarifies that the presentation must happen within the expiry date of the credit. So, if your LC expires 15 days after shipment, that 15-day deadline trumps the 21-day rule. Always be mindful of both the 21-day period and the LC expiry date. The earlier of the two will apply. Article 14d is where things get really interesting. It deals with data consistency. It says that data in one document does not need to be identical to data in another document, but it must not conflict with it. This is a huge shift from previous rules that demanded mirror image consistency. For example, if the invoice describes the goods as 1,000 high-quality cotton t-shirts and the packing list just says 1,000 cotton t-shirts, that's perfectly fine under Article 14D. It's not conflicting information. However, if the invoice says cotton t-shirts and the bill of lading says polyester shirts, that's a clear conflict, and the bank will raise a discrepancy. But a typo like FOBB for FOB is generally considered a discrepancy. Similarly, abbreviations versus full spellings can cause issues. The only exception is the commercial invoice, where the goods description must correspond with what's stated in the letter of credit itself. Next is Article 14E. This one is straightforward. In documents other than the commercial invoice, the description of goods, services, or performance, if stated, can be in general terms not conflicting with their description in the credit. So, if the LC calls for brand X and model while laptops with specific serial numbers, your bill of lading could just state laptops or electronics. As long as it doesn't say desktop computers, which would be a conflict. Hope you are in the clear. This provides flexibility and acknowledges that different documents serve different purposes. Let's move on to Article 14F. This is a very practical rule. If a letter of credit requires a document other than a transport document, insurance document, or commercial invoice, and doesn't specify who should issue it or what its data content should be, banks will accept the document as presented. The only conditions are that its content appears to fulfill the function of the required document and that it does not conflict with any other document. For instance, if the LC simply asks for a packing list without any other details, the bank will accept any document titled packing list as long as its content seems reasonable and does not contradict the invoice or bill of lading. In case of certificates, if the LC does not specify who should issue the certificates, banks will accept the certificates even if the beneficiary or whoever issued the certificates. Commercial invoice should be issued by the beneficiary as per Article 18 of UCP 600 with exceptions of Article 38. Transport documents should be issued according to Article 19-25 Directive as required by the letter of credit. And insurance documents must be issued according to the directive of Article 28 of UCP 600. Article 14G deals with documents presented that were not required by the letter of credit. Banks will simply disregard them. They won't examine them for compliance and will just pass them on to the applicant. This means you can't create a discrepancy by submitting an extra incorrect document. However, it's always best practice to only submit what's required to avoid any confusion. Even additional of any documents that are required by the credit must not be treated as discrepancy. Suppose 1 original and 5 copies of invoice is required by the credit, but 1 original and 10 copies of invoice was submitted. This is not discrepancy. Article 14H conditions without stipulating any documents. Banks will disregard such a condition. For example, LC writes a condition like serial number of bill of lading must be mentioned. But in which document specifically such number should be mentioned it was not specified. In such case, only in the defaulted document may display such numbers and nowhere else. Even it will not be treated as discrepancy. Sub-Article 14I states a document may be dated prior to the date of issuance of the credit, but must not be dated later than its date of presentation. For example, a bill of lading has been issued before the date of the credit to sell to another buyers, but for some disputes between the seller and the buyer, the first buyer did not receive the goods. The seller then canceled previous agreement and contracted with a new buyer to sell the goods. The new buyer approached for a letter of credit to the issuing bank where the goods are in destination port. In such case, the documents may be dated prior to the date of the letter of credit, but it must not be dated later than the date of presentation of the documents. Sub-Article 14J states when the addresses of the beneficiary and the applicant appear in any stipulated document, they need not be the same as those stated in the credit or in any other stipulated document, but must be within the same country as the respective addresses mentioned in the credit. Contact details, telefax, telephone, email, and the like stated as part of the beneficiary's and applicant's address will be disregarded. However, when the addresses and contact details of the applicant appear as part of the consignee or notified party details on transport documents subject to Articles 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, or 25, they must be as stated in the credit. It states that if a credit gives the beneficiary's or the applicant's address, it doesn't have to be the same in the presented documents. For example, the LC might list the applicant's head office address, but the bill of lading might show their warehouse address as the consignee. This is acceptable. However, the country must remain the same as stated in the LC. You cannot have an applicant listed in France in the LC and then in Germany on the invoice. Also, contact details like phone numbers or email addresses, when part of the address, will be disregarded. Now for Article 14K. This one is simple but important. The shipper or consignor of the goods shown on any document does not need to be the beneficiary of the credit. For example, a trading company might be the beneficiary, but the actual manufacturer might be listed as the shipper on the bill of lading. This is perfectly normal in global trade, and UCP 600 recognizes this reality. Let us now see what Sub-Article 14L says. It says, a transport document may be issued by any party other than a carrier, owner, master, or charterer, provided that the transport documents meets the requirements of Articles 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24 of these rules. As long as the document meets the requirements of the specific transport article like Article 19, 20, or 21 and is signed as required by those articles, it will be accepted. This covers documents like a freight forwarder's bill of lading. Banks will often look at the context, but the rule of thumb is to be as precise as possible to avoid any potential for rejection. Being meticulous here can save you a lot of trouble. So there you have it, a detailed tour of UCP 600 Article 14. Understanding these sub-articles is not just academic. It's essential for ensuring smooth transactions and getting paid on time. By making sure your documents comply with these standards, you minimize the risk of discrepancies and keep your trade finance operations running efficiently. I hope this detailed breakdown was helpful. If you have any questions or want to share your own experiences with Article 14, please drop a comment below. Do not forget to like this video if you found it valuable and subscribe for more deep dives into international trade and finance. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.